I'm here with WebRTC industry analyst Tsahi Levent-Levi, who I hope you already know from his extensive writings about WebRTC at bloggeek.me. Thanks for joining me today, Tsahi.
Thank you, Arin.
It's always great to speak with you, and you'll be our guest on WebRTC Live on March 13th. But I wanted to speak with you a bit sooner, and this is a segment on WebRTC Live that you and I will start doing more regularly together, where we have a short conversation about whatever's on our minds with regards to WebRTC. And you've been doing a great job of cataloging all the blog posts that are out there, including ours about Twilio video migration options in your WebRTC weekly newsletter. But we're going to stick with today's topic for today's episode around LLMs and WebRTC. So I'd like to hear your take. Are you a fan of LLMs and WebRTC?
It's hard to say. It's probably somewhere between yes and no. The no part is simple because in many cases, LLM, Gen AI, whatever, feels like market whitewashing that you need to do today to all products. You need to massage them well and say, we're doing LLMs.
Right.
And then, well, we're doing WebRTC with LLMs. That's what we need to do.
Right.
So I understand that part, okay? It was 2 years ago, it was probably AI and the metaverse, or VR, AR, XR, whatever are, and now it's LLMs. So there is no difference from that point of view.
Mhm.
I think the difference is that ChatGPT is actually useful.
Right.
Okay. I don't use it a lot, by the way. I use Midjourney more to make images because it's more artistic. And for me, ChatGPT, when I used it, is also for artistic purposes, like figuring out things or thinking about things more than actually using it to make decisions for me.
Hmm.
Now, what happens with LLMs is that you use them today to go and ask questions and get answers most of the time. It's like a back and forth conversation, which means that you're going to start seeing them inside bots. Every bot out there is going to add LLM. Why? Because, well, LLM and whitewash whatever it is we're doing with Gen AI. This being the case, you're going to start seeing that also for voice conversations. And in voice, you sometimes need WebRTC. And if you need to connect WebRTC to an LLM, then there's a whole point of how do you do it in real time. Okay. Is that much different than what we've seen in the previous round? I'm not so sure. That's like my gut feeling, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in the real time world, and when you talk about like voice and talking with an LLM, so to speak, there's been some interesting examples, and we're doing it ourselves. But it's there's still some latency in that. It's built in the round trip of speech to text, LLM,
Yep.
text to speech back, in a pure voice conversation has some latency in it still for sure. Though, as happens with technology, it's getting faster. It'll continue to get faster.
Yep.
So I think we'll see that continue to improve and be interesting. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting space, and the real time aspect is interesting because we are making a leap from slowly perhaps there's leading the way with marketing speak, but the chat bots where you can handle some of that latency to more pure real-time interactions with
Yep.
LLMs that I think with time are going to be really interesting. I'm optimistic, although selective perhaps in how I want to use them at this point. I don't think they're replacing a lot of things, but there's a lot of augmentation possibilities.
I think that when you talk about latency, it's interesting to see how things changed. It started with, let's run a call. At the end of the call, we have a file. Let's send that file, ship it to AWS Lex to get the transcription of that. Then we started saying, no, we need it faster. How do you do it faster? You cobble a WebSocket and connect the WebSocket so that the file is being created in the back in order to do that. Then today we're trying to connect WebRTC directly to the part that is doing the speech to text in the cloud or on the edge sometimes. But then you see something interesting. I saw that a few years back in a conference in China. where what they did was connect the microphone to speech to text so that they show it just on the panel next, because it's there are Chinese there and you're the only American speaker or Israeli speaking in English. So the translation was there. So you see this happening and you see these words in English in between. Then you started seeing a lot of the real-time speech-to-text solutions where what they do is they fix what they write or what they output based on context. So they would start saying one thing or writing one thing and then start modifying it as it moves along, because they understand that there is context to the word, and because of the context, it sounded like one thing more than another, but it's likely more the other thing than that first thing. You can't do it if you're adding an LLM and you're saying it needs to be faster. Because now I can't go back with my text to speech after passing the text into the LLM already. So, like, what's going to be the solution there? That's going to be interesting.
Right.
Of how do you like squeeze that pipeline even further to get faster, low latencies. And on the other end, I guess we'll have the same problem, though I don't know that as well, of getting the text from the LLM and then doing the text to speech part.
Mhm.
And without having that sound robotic or adding all of the nuances of human speech with the
Right.
pauses and words at a higher or lower in volume and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So again, how do you do that fast enough to figure out what I'm actually thinking in my head a few words into the future?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think those are great points, and I think that to me, that's what's interesting about this is what instead of uh, like WebRTC becoming simpler and sort of
mhm.
replacing the development that needs to be done, instead of AI kind of replacing development, everything you just identified are what makes integrating these things together complex, right? Because
Yep.
you can send it out to an LLM and even get that transcript in close to real time, but it's going to be less accurate than the transcript that takes a little bit more time to process, factors in the context, like you said. And so, from a development perspective, you want both worlds, right? You want to
Mhm.
show something, even if it's a little inaccurate, as fast as you can, but then, say after the call in a contact center, the summary that you store with it, you want to be the more accurate summary, right? And
Yep.
so you're doing double the processing. You're maybe even updating things on the screen, a few seconds after they happen to show the more accurate context-driven version. Like there's all this complexity there that you can build in, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a fascinating space, and we could have a whole nother segment just talking about the idea of text to speech and avatars and how much could we do that in real time if we
Mhm.
wanted to, because there's a lot of interesting developments there. But we're running short on time already, which is why it's good that you and I have a full episode to talk in March. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I was looking at a couple of websites, right? Like LiveKit has their LiveKit agents that's
Yep.
coming out now. Daily, right on their homepage now, says real-time voice, video, and AI for developers. Right there in the key value statement, right? So even if it's marketing speak, right, the AI is getting wrapped in to the
Yes.
core value statement of CPASs, which is interesting.
The AI part I can relate and connect to a lot better than just saying LLM.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a lot broader in nature and it
Okay.
has different utilities. So I can do AI on the codec level. I can do it on the network level.
Yeah.
I can actually integrate it with algorithms inside WebRTC versus saying, well, we've got this thing that does speech, so let's do an LLM because ChatGPT.
Right.
Um, it's a lot less obvious and a lot harder to decide what to do there than with an LLM on top of WebRTC and saying, well, let's to talk to Santa because it's Christmas. I, I think I've seen about 3 of these in
Right.
December timeframe, which is nice. It shows what the power of
Shows
LLMs, but
possibilities. Yeah.
yes, but is that the real use case or use of AI? I'm not sure.
Well, maybe that's a good point for us to stop at, perhaps, and a little teaser for we could talk perhaps in March a little more about the nuance of these things. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation then, Sahi. Yeah, thanks for sharing your industry insights with us. Always a pleasure to speak with you. For those watching who want to learn more about Sahi, go to bloggeek.me. And we'll talk again on March 13th. So for those watching today, make sure to follow WebRTC Ventures on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter at webrtc.ventures to stay informed about all the upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live. Thanks again for joining me, Sahi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Arin.
And thanks to all of you for joining us and watching today. Let's make it live.